already knocked out the original trilogy. Now let's talk about the prequels. Ooh. Every saga has a beginning, and in this case, we kick off Star Wars truly with The Phantom Menace. Even though it's technically the fourth movie in the franchise, George Lucas decided to do prequels following the Star Wars trilogy, and people were excited. The hype was real. That is how much of an impact Star Wars have left the fans in the 80s. So the entire time in the 90s, it was just like Star Wars was all the way up here. It was like just something breathtaking. Everybody loved it. And then they were talking about making the Phantom Menace episode 1 the beginning of a new trilogy, and showing how Anakin joined the dark side. When people saw this poster, people were like, "Okay, this is gonna be cool. How are we gonna get to Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader?" Well, we start off with the Phantom Menace, and the prequels have been hated for a long time. Some people say that this is the one of the better of the prequels, and to me, this is my least favorite of the prequels, believe it or not. There is a lot of problems with this movie, but to be honest, the biggest problem was that this movie was way too far away from the beginning of the origins of Anakin. Because if you had never watched this movie, you kind of don't feel the urge to ever watch it again. Like, it doesn't feel so important. And part of it has to do with the fact that Anakin was casted as a child. And I think that's where the big red flag was. So everybody knows that Jake Lloyd's career was ruined after this movie. He has even said in interviews, "Star Wars has ruined my life," and that is unfortunate that this movie single-handedly hurt this child's career. Now he is just like a big problem in the world, and I do feel bad for Jake Lloyd, and I should take blame because I was one of the Jake Lloyd haters, and it really the real fault was the fact that they casted him. Because rewatching them, seeing Anakin and Padme interact was weird, because eventually these two were gonna hook up, and it was really weird watching it. So that was a huge problem, because I'm like, they are way too far apart. Luckily, in episode 2, they get an older actor to play Anakin Skywalker, but it should have been an older actor, at least a 17-year-old from the start, not here, because now you're basically telling us that this is gonna go nowhere. A huge negative that people have criticized the prequels in particularly has been this guy, Jar Jar Binks. This guy was annoying, frustrating, stupid, all kinds of words in the dictionary. Another actor whose career was ruined, Ahmed Best, has basically been hated forever ever since this character came to life, and we don't understand why he was part of it. It just makes no sense. He was just so annoying and frustrating. I guess they needed a side character that was goofy and silly, but he just plays no role into the movie, and it unfortunately hurts this movie. Um, Other things that I did not like, Anakin apparently built C-3PO. Because the movie is so far away from A New Hope, it really feels weird seeing C-3PO and R2-D2 in these movies, but it basically just felt like a cash grab. Don't get me wrong, some of these could have worked. For example, Jabba the Hutt being there at his early stages could have made sense. It could have been Jabba the Hutt Senior, if anything, and then we could have like moved past it. But it's just that they just felt like they crammed in a lot of stuff that like, oh, remember this, and then the new stuff that we got kind of didn't make sense. Example: Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Jar Jar in a ship under seas, getting chased by this like big sea creature alien thingy majiggy. It was so weird and distracting. Plus, the CGI just looked weird. I don't get me wrong, 1999 wasn't a great time for CGI, but still, this scene just kind of like made no sense. It just felt like they were just forcibly adding an action scene just for the sake of adding an action scene. If there's anything that they got correctly in these movies, were the Jedi and the Emperor. Emperor Palpatine, uh, Ian McDiarmid coming back was incredible. He looks younger than originally. His performance was great. It's just like I don't imagine anybody else playing Emperor Palpatine. There's voice actors obviously, but like still as far as live action, there's no one other than Ian McDiarmid. Sam Jackson as Mace Windu was pretty solid. He wasn't the greatest thing ever, but it was pretty cool to see Samuel L. Jackson in a Star Wars movie. And then he was the only one with the purple lightsaber. The reasoning behind it had to do with the fact that Sam Jackson wanted a purple lightsaber, and then George Lucas said, "You know what? I got you." So, we were used to green lightsabers, blue lightsabers, and red lightsabers, but Mace Windu changed it up and we got a purple lightsaber. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is different. And it's actually kind of cool to see the early stages of the Jedi Order with all different kinds of Jedis interacting. Yoda being on top. We don't get to see him fight in this movie, but we definitely get to see him with other Jedi. And then there's obviously a lot of other conversations when they go to Tatooine, seeing Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan meeting Anakin for the first time was nice outside of just the fact that they picked such a young actor. The pod race scene, while cool, it was a little disappointing because I did watch Chris Stuckman's review when initially hearing about the Phantom Menace and watching YouTube as a kid. It was really odd seeing the pod races now because all you see is them going left, right, similar to what Chris Stuckman says. And it does kind of ruin it for me. So there was that. But hands down, the best part of this entire movie was Darth Maul. Um, Darth Maul was this apprentice of Emperor Palpatine. We didn't know it yet. Well, obviously, the people who grew up with the original trilogy knew where this was all leading to. But Darth Maul just was really cool. And over time, Darth Maul has become a global sensation. He even had his own spin-off series that just ended this week, which was awesome. You should go out of your way and watch it. Pretty good to see them doing justice to Darth Maul. And in this movie, they have a really good battle between Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, Darth Maul, Ray Park, he's such a badass that they had him fighting two guys, and that battle alone was just so groundbreaking. Duel of the Fates playing in the background, I could just see it right now. It's one of the greatest battles ever put together in cinema history, and it's crazy because that battle and this movie don't match. There's a lot of talking, goofy characters, connections that don't make sense yet, and they probably never will. That battle where, again, no disrespect to Jake Luck, but that battle with Anakin Skywalker in space shooting other ships, it was too weird because in one hand, like, there's a helmet, perfectly fitted helmet on Anakin Skywalker, and he's just blasting everybody. I get it. It was supposed to be callback to Luke Skywalker, but that one felt more unique and important because he still felt like an underdog. Here, Anakin can figure everything out, even though he's a child. Like, I don't know, they just blew everything out of the proportion. They just were in such a rush. I'm like, why are you in such a rush? The trilogy just started. Take your time and organizing and putting this story together. Qui-Gon Jinn's death was very important, but Darth Maul's death was like, why? But how? Luckily, the prequels and other projects have fixed that. Over the past few years, they gave him robot legs and everything, but it was unfortunate that this is the only time we ever got to see Darth Maul in the movies outside of Solo, a Star Wars story. I do wish that Darth Maul stuck around for a while, but it does make up in this one scene. First of all, Qui-Gon's Jinn's funeral was great because, you know, they have Qui-Gon's Jinn's body being burned, which is a callback to Return of the Jedi. I'm like, okay, that's why Luke Skywalker burned Darth Vader's body, because that is how a funeral for a Jedi looks like. But that interaction with Mace Windu and Yoda talking, like Yoda saying there's always two, a master and an apprentice. The question is, was Darth Maul the master or the apprentice? And then they just show a shot of the Emperor. However, the movie ends with a celebration of them beating Darth Maul. Happy go lucky ending. And eventually, Obi-Wan was going to train Anakin as orders by Qui-Gon Jinn. He said, train the boy for me, can you? Even though initially Yoda didn't want to, he was too young. He saw something dark, which eventually leads to him becoming Darth Vader. I don't know. I just think like if there were some tweaks in this movie, this could have been hands down one of the greatest movies ever. Some people adored it. I know when people saw it initially, people loved it. But to me, I was never high on it. This movie came out in 1999. That was the year I was born. So I must have been maybe 5 or 6 when I initially watched it. And I did find myself very bored for most of it because it's just a bunch of walking and talking, political thriller, even though that wasn't my cup of tea at the time and probably never will be. But I'm gonna be real. My biggest problem with this movie is that it's very skippable. It is way too far away from the story that you're trying to tell. Half of these characters don't come back, so there's really no one you could relate to outside of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like I said, Anakin gets recasted into Hayden Christensen. So to me, I'm giving this movie a C minus. There was some stuff that I really like. Again, Duel of the Fates, the battle with Darth Maul and versus Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon was phenomenal and breathtaking, but a lot of it felt just very underwhelming. The CG was terrible, and keep in mind, there was other stuff with terrible CG, but at least they had a cohesive story. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the Phantom Menace. I have more positive things to say as far as Star Wars goes, especially with my next video being Star Wars Clone Wars, not the Clone Wars, but it's going to be the 2D animated series that came out on Cartoon Network around the prequel times. So stay tuned for that review tomorrow, and yeah, take care, everybody.